Hi, it is JIT UA Courses, and welcome to lesson number 20 of the .NET Developer series, in which we will cover the most relevant topics to becoming a .NET developer. So hit the subscribe button and bell to see new videos on our channel. Okay, let's go. In this lesson, we will learn about dependency injection in .NET applications. If this sounds interesting to you, don't hesitate and hit the like button. What is dependency injection? ASP.NET Core supports the dependency injection (DI) software development pattern, which is a technique for achieving inversion of control (IOC) between classes and their dependencies. The direction of dependencies within a program should be toward abstraction, not implementation details. Most programs are written in such a way that compile time dependency flows toward runtime execution, creating a direct dependency graph. That is, if Class A calls a method of Class B, and Class B calls a method of Class C, then at compile time, Class A will depend on Class B, and Class B will depend on Class C, as shown below. Applying the principle of dependency inversion allows A to call methods of an abstraction implemented by B, allowing A to call B at runtime, but for B to depend on the interface managed by A at compile time, thus inverting the typical compile time dependency. At runtime, the flow of program execution remains the same, but the implementation of interfaces means that different implementations of those interfaces can be easily wired. Configure services. The advantage of ASP.NET Core in this regard is that the framework already by default has a built-in container for introducing dependencies, which is represented by the iService Provider interface. The dependencies themselves are also called services, so the container can be called a service provider. This container is responsible for mapping dependencies to specific types and injecting dependencies into various objects. For managing services in the application, the services property is defined in the Web Application Builder class, which represents the iService collection object, a collection of services. The ASP.NET Core framework provides several built-in services that we can use. But we can also create our services. Let's consider how to do it. Let's define a new iTime service interface, which is designed to receive the time. We will also define two classes that will implement this interface. Now let's add the iTime service to the collection of services and use it in the application. 2 points should be highlighted here. First, adding a service to the collection of program services. Thanks to the statement add transient, the system will transfer instances of the short-time service class instead of the iTime service interface objects. After adding a service, it can be retrieved and used in any part of the application. Depending on the situation, different methods can be used to receive the service. In this case, the property services, which is provided by the service provider of the iService Provider object, is used. To receive a service from a service provider, the getService method is called, which is typed by the type of service. After receiving the service, we can use it. Lifetime of the service. ASP.NET Core allows you to manage the life cycle of services implemented in the application. From the perspective of the life cycle, services can represent one of the following types. Transient, a new service object is created during each call to the service. During one request, there may be several calls to the service, accordingly, a new object will be created with each call. This lifecycle model is most suitable for lightweight services that do not store state data. Scoped, a service object is created for each request. That is, if there are several calls to the same service during one request, then the same service object will be used for all these calls. Singleton, a service object is created the first time it is accessed, and all subsequent requests use the same previously created service object. Each service type has its addTransient, addScoped, and addSingleton methods. Injection in constructors and through the container. In ASP.NET Core, we can get added service applications in different ways, through the services property of the Web Application Object, Service Locator, through the Request Services property of the HTTP Context Request Context in Middleware Components, Service Locator. Through the class constructor. Through the invoke method parameter of the middleware component. The services property of the web application object. Where the web application object that represents the current program is available to us, for example, in the program CS file, we can use its services property to obtain services. This property exposes an iServiceProvider object that provides several methods for getting services. This pattern of obtaining a service is also called a service locator, and as a rule, it is not recommended for use. However, within the framework of ASP.NET Core, in principle, we can use similar functionality, especially where other methods of obtaining dependencies are not available. HTTP Context Request Services. Where we have an HTTP context object, we can use its request services property to obtain services. This property provides an iServiceProvider object. That is, we are dealing with the above-described method of obtaining services using the getService and getRequiredService methods. Constructors. ASP.NET Core's built-in dependency injection system uses class constructors to pass all dependencies. Passing services through constructors is the best method of applying dependencies. Invoke/invokeAsync method of middleware components. Just as dependencies are passed to the class constructor, they can also be passed to the invoke/invokeAsync method of the middleware component. This is all for this lesson. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so as not to miss the following videos in the series. Feel free to leave a comment and like this video. You are also welcome to leave any questions in the comments section. I will be happy to answer them. And also I encourage you to help brave people in Ukraine to defend themselves in this horrible war. Please use the QR code or links in the description to visit charitable foundations that help Ukraine. Thanks. See you in the next videos.